And I'd like to introduce everybody to Matt Downton, who is COO, Chief Operating Officer of Higher Park, which is a hedge fund, and also a director of Upside Tech, both of areas which he'll be talking to us about this evening. And I'm going to launch straight in with questions to make it easy. We'll do about half an hour of questions, and then if people could ask their own questions in the chat, then we will try and monitor those questions, and Matt, you'll be able to see them and I can see them too, and we can go through them. So that would be absolutely great. So Matt, it would be great simply if you could tell us what you do and what your role is.
Yeah, certainly. Evening everyone, thanks all for coming. I can see the number of people that are here at the minute, so I'm hoping to keep that number up until the end. Oh, one dropped in and out then. So yeah, evening. Thanks for coming along. So yeah, as Naomi said, currently doing 2 roles at the moment. Well, I do some others as well, but the ones tonight, Higher Park, which is a hedge fund in London, and another firm called Upside Technologies, also based in London. I'm COO probably of both effectively, and at some point going to split off into managing one of them and let the other one spin off. So there's two roles there at the moment, really. And also we'll come on to it later on, sort of winding up some other business in the past.
Sorry, I just muted Matt.
Currently, currently all working at home, getting used to technology like Zoom and Google Teams and all kinds of things like that. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple of months from that perspective. On the upside, we're actually going to take a couple of months to plan things for the rest of this year, and we had set aside dedicated time to do that. So this current situation hasn't harmed us at all in that way. It's actually given us a lot of thinking time. But again, you sort of miss the camaraderie of meeting people and chatting people face to face. So yeah, so that's what we're up to at the moment. Yeah, and I've been in terms of time, I guess, Higher Park, we'll come on to that, probably 2018 we started that off, and Upside was probably halfway through last year, but with some input from work that we've done over the last 10 years. So not an overnight idea, that's for sure.
So can you give us a potted history of your career to date then, please?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I'm a bit older than most of the people on this call, so I'll go. It's not too many jobs, but it goes back a long way, so I'll give it the whole thing. So first ever job was in the news. Well, I had a paper round. First ever paid job that I had to turn up to every day was in the newsagents, hoovering the floor and filling shelves up after school. And that paid me, it was £1 an hour, if you want to equate that to a coffee or a beer. So yeah, so that's how old I am. So it was £1 an hour, and I thought that was good because at the end of the week I had £5, so that was cool. I left school at 16. In my last year at school, I wanted to be a hotel manager, a chef. My headmaster, who was quite strict, told me I should never get into the hotel trade, but quite like hotels, but I didn't. He put me off that. Next door neighbour was a chef. I thought that was a cool job, and he put me off that. And then I sort of managed to, at the time, it was quite straightforward to get jobs in insurance and banks at the time. I'm talking retail banks. So I applied to a few and got a job at NatWest Bank, actually in my hometown in Surrey. And I was actually in a retail branch, so counting money, people paying in checks, so your normal banking. Back in the day, probably a lot more people work in those branches than now. They're quite sparse now, but at the time, lots of admin, lots of paper, lots of people set in their ways. So I did that for 5 years, went to another branch, and I was always interested in shares, stocks and shares, and I managed to work on the investment desk there, which sounds grand, but it wasn't. It was someone would come in and say, can I buy some British Gas shares? And I would buy the British Gas shares for them, fill out a bit of paper. Lots of paper in those days, like you can trade now on your phone. You can do that yourself. You don't need to go into a bank. So that was how I got interested in shares. I think that helped me there. I left there and then spent 2 years at a company called Noble Lowndes, which is a employee benefits company. And I administered some share schemes for employees for oil companies. So I won't name them, but a couple of the big oil companies, their employees had share schemes, and I helped administer those. That was an important role because I'd always wanted to work in the city. As you can tell, I left school at 16, so didn't miss it. I just didn't do it. I didn't go to college and I didn't go to university. So trying to get a job in the city then and now, to be fair, without a degree is a lot harder. It's a definite step in the right direction if you have a degree, and college would help as well. I had neither of those, so trying to get a job in the city was hard. It was also hard to convince people you understood shares and investments. So I had to get shares on my CV to prove that I understood it. So that job, whilst it was only 2 years, that got me shares on my CV. I then found a job in the city. I'd applied for it. It was called Sun Life for Canada. I found the job in a magazine one night. I was looking for jobs in the city. They wanted an administrator. I sent in my CV. I sent it on blue paper, and they picked it out. They said at the interview they'd noticed it because it was on blue paper. I know that sounds weird, but it did make a difference, and it's what I had to have something that got me stuck out, and that was it probably. So I got a job, Sun Life for Canada, in the city. That was my first job in London. I was there for 5 years. I joined as the most junior person in the team, and through a series of consequences, so we say, I ended up head of the operations team and running operations there. I did that company, I think, for 5-6 years. So that really got me established in terms of being able to say I could work in the city. I understood shares, I understood finance, I understood investment. So that was key, that role. But it got insanely busy, and we cut back staff, and it just wasn't. Well, it was just too busy. It was just crazy. So the company was merging and taking over all kinds of things. So I left there, and you have to take roles, and they come up, and you think it's the right thing. And I took this role. I was there for 9 months. It was a corporate actions assistant manager or something. So it was a step down. It was wrong job, wrong time, and that was my shortest one. That was 9 months. So I left there. It was just too quiet. And I'd gone from being manically busy and actually found that I enjoyed being manically busy, and being quiet was not for me. So 9 months there. So, no problem admitting your mistakes, get on, find something else, move on. We're up to 2001 now, so we're in this decade. So 2001, 2008, joined Fidelity Investments, which is a big investment company. You may have heard of them. Worked in a projects team there, an investment admin team, lots of exposure to lots of different areas, derivatives, which are quite interesting. Worked with the front and back office. Front office is what we normally associate with, say, traders and portfolio managers. Back office is more admin, operations type stuff, which is my sort of strength, really. So I worked there for 8 years, to 2008. Tens of thousands of employees. A good place to get experience. Fairly slow progression there because of the tiers of people and the amount of people you have there. Bit political, probably. If you work your way around the politics, you can do well there. Some people flew through it, some people didn't like it at all. But I actually loved it there. It was good. But I wanted to work for a hedge fund, and that was what I had my eye on at that time. And hedge fund, I got back to this to the same start of my career. I want to work for a hedge fund, but a hedge fund won't employ you because you haven't worked for a hedge fund. So you get at the time, and I still think that's fairly true. So without hedge fund experience, no one would take a chance on me because I didn't know what a hedge fund was, which was a shame because I did know, because we had hedge fund products that I worked on at Fidelity. Anyway, an opportunity came up, a friend of mine, and probably one of the things mentioned later about importance of networks. Someone I used to work with at Sun Life of Canada, he took over a hedge fund, and he was the fund manager and owner, and he had some operations team there, and he wanted someone to have a look at it. So I went in under the guise of a consultant, spent a week there, wrote him a report, told him all the things that he needed to fix, all the things that he would need to know that will shortly be keeping him up at night all awake. So then he employed me as the head of ops of that hedge fund. So I'm now in a hedge fund, which is brilliant. That lasted just over 2 years, and then the big crash came and the money got taken out, and things started to get a bit dicey. So that fund wound up. So my mate had to make me redundant. So he's still my best mate. I talk to him every day. It's fine. But he's still upset about it. And then through another, and again, network connection, in 2010, I was looking for a job as I was leaving the other one. And then I got a call from a hedge fund called Vivaldi, which I couldn't find any information about whatsoever. Went along to the interview, all sounded very good. They phoned me up later in the day, offered me the job, and I was there, well, to 2018 when we wound that up, and then a few of us stayed together.
You're there?
Yeah, sorry, that's my screensaver coming on. Sorry. Yeah, so 2018 we wound up Vivaldi, and then a few of us stuck together, and we've been working on Higher Park and Upside ever since. So that's what we're up to now. So yeah, not too many jobs. I haven't flitted around too much. I don't like all the hassle of changing jobs. I'm not keen on doing that too often. I think some people don't mind that. A lot of industries that's fairly common. Yeah, that's my potted history, which is quite long, really. But in years, maybe not in terms of companies.
So tell us a bit more about a hedge fund. What exactly it is, and what a hedge fund does, and how it kind of fits into the financial industry in general.
Yeah, I guess they've got a bad name, so that we'll clear that up first. So people hear hedge funds and they think it's a bit like the Wild West out there. They're really highly regulated, and our hedge fund, the previous one, and hopefully the one we're working on now, we were managing some big numbers for people, and they were government entities, and you can't manage their money and have some sort of incident that attracts the headlines to be on the front page of the FT, and that's how they find out. So in terms of hedge fund, it's not the Wild West. It's really regulated. I know what comes across in the press and things like that. What they do have is more tools than a traditional fund to manage risk. We have the ability to take short positions. Obviously that would benefit from a share going down, but that allows you to allocate risk accordingly. You can hedge yourself. The whole thing's in the name. You can take hedge positions. A traditional long only fund is a long only fund. So you're in a fund market that we've just seen from February. The market's dropped last couple of months 30%. A long only fund would probably have lost 30%, whereas a hedge fund could have gone to cash. It could have put some positions in to mitigate that, and it would probably have, hopefully, not have lost 30%. On the flip side of that long only fund would probably have bounced back by now because the market's bounced back. So they would have benefited that way. The hedge fund has just got more tools. It can take bigger positions, more risk. It's nimbler, but it's also for sophisticated investors. High net worth institutions, pension schemes, and it's probably for people that have got some money that they don't mind risking a bit more on. So they don't mind you taking more risks. And there's different types of hedge funds. They all do different things. But to me, it's the ability to do things nimbly, to have different tools at your disposal, and to be able to work it around that way, as opposed to a traditional, say, a tracker fund that's just going to track the FTSE 100 up and down, up and down. We can take active decisions on whatever we want at any time, really.
So when you started and you went into a retail banking environment, and how long was it before you knew that you wanted to go out of that and your ultimate goal was a hedge fund? Was that, did you know right then that that was the ultimate goal?
I wanted to work. I must have watched the Wall Street film, which probably people a bit young for that. So there's a good film called Wall Street with Michael Douglas in that probably inspired me a bit, not maybe rightly or wrongly. But I think, once I'd invested in shares before I joined NatWest, or I was interested in shares and I read about them. And I remember buying shares when I was at NatWest. And I think that got me interested, and I wanted to know more about where do they come from and why can't I be they had the big bang in when it all went into electronic around the time of the big storm. And I was thinking, well, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to get involved in that. That looks more fun than doing what I'm doing now. And I've always, whatever position I've been in, I've always looked ahead as to how that's going to look in 5 years' time, or if I'm still doing what I'm doing in that period of time, is that a good thing or not? And I always felt, the jobs I've moved on from, it's where they've not been progressive enough for me, or I've decided that I need to progress for my own benefit. But I think when I was working with investments, involved in shares, and it was always of an interest. And I think, well, rather than be me phoning up the broker saying, can I buy 100 British Gas? Why can't I go and work in that office and be on the other end of the phone and be involved in that? So I was never a broker or anything like that, but I was always on the operations of, people doing that kind of thing. So I've never been a trader. I've never been a fund manager. I've never been an analyst, but I've always been involved in the periphery. And personally, I've played the longer game in some of those roles are fairly short term for some people, and they don't hang around as long as maybe an operations person is. So I've always tried to find a role that I'll still be able to do in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. So I'm hanging in there.
So you're obviously in operations, and what does that constitute within the hedge fund environment, being a COO as opposed to working more in other areas?
Yeah, so one of my main roles at Vivaldi was head of operations, and I guess you learn the importance of sort of accuracy and attention to detail and things being in order. And I guess I'm a admin throughout my life, so that's what I do. COO is very much like another version of an operations manager, really. So if things are going wrong, it's probably coming back down to your desk pretty quickly. So anything that doesn't work or isn't there for people when they come into work usually falls at your feet. So if everything's working really well and no one's moaning about anything, then you're probably doing a good job. So basically, I see it as when our employees come to work, whatever role they do, they need to be able to get into work and start, and it all works. And that's from as basic as having a seat, having an office, having a chair, being able to log on, getting paid each month, having healthcare cover, having a pension, being able to work, systems stay up. There's other people that work under that, like tech and legal and compliance, but all those things tend to roll up that way. And if there's a problem, people tend to come my direction for that kind of thing. So it's similar to operations where, or any relationship where you're having customer service, going back to customer service days, is that, if people can come in, do what they want, and it works, then everyone's happy. If it's not, they usually find someone, and it's operational, so it usually comes to me. So I like it because it's very varied. Every single day is different. Well, every single hour can be different, and it's great. It's just variety all the time, and getting to use probably skills that I've spent hundreds of years learning along the way, and it's it's just about keeping chief operating officer. It's about keeping everything operating. There's legal, compliance, all kinds of things. But yeah, it's varied.
Now, I do understand that often with hedge funds, you don't necessarily take people at a graduate level. Often, as you said, people need to have some experience before people in hedge funds tend to employ them. And that's not across the board, but we know that kind of happens. So now, obviously, when back in the day, as you said, your route into where you are today is probably going to be a little bit more different to the guys now on this call, who are, I should imagine, most of them going to university or at university already. So to get into a hedge fund in any position, not necessarily operations, how would you see more of a career path for them?
What, nowadays? We still take, so we at Valdi, we took people straight in.
Oh, you did?
And one of them's still with us now in our current guys, and we'd like to do that again. I think that's the way in. Internships, if you can get them, good way to get noticed. A lot of the big banks have graduate schemes, and like even if you apply and go to some of the interviews and things, at least you'll get an idea of what they're after if that one doesn't work out. Direct approach as well. I think I listen to people and see how they use lots of websites for just sticking their information in and hoping. One of them's called phishing, I think, so it's a bit like phishing. So we get cold calls through websites and things through our website with people sending things in, and actually personally I actually think that's quite good that someone's bothered to do it. I think if you put an effort into somewhere, in one of those so yeah, if you try different various routes you can go through, but it's fine unless you've got some sort of direct approach. Then that's quite good. Networking's good if through things like this. It's worth keeping in touch with people on this call, and you'll build your own networks. But yeah, I think the way I did it was through adverts in newspapers. There's probably less of those now. Probably on the websites you can find them. But I wouldn't be afraid to find out who you need to talk to in a certain place and approach directly. If you make sure your grammar's okay, you get quite a few through where things don't look as sharp as they could do, and that doesn't help. So if you present something decent, someone will read it and hopefully reply to you. I would anyway.
And what do you look for in somebody when they are coming to you to look for a job role?
In operations, you just need what we need: accuracy, quality, attention to detail, that kind of thing. But more recently, been interviewing people in different roles, and I want to see some enthusiasm. Really, we have people come into interviews that it looks like we're doing them a favour, and there's no real drive or enthusiasm, and maybe we need to spice up our interviews a bit more. But you think this isn't going to work out. If you like this now, it's probably not going to be great if you're sitting next to me every day. So basic stuff like presentable when you come to an interview, that kind of thing. But I think in operations, you've got to like what you do. You've got to understand that sometimes it's going to be different to what it was 5 minutes ago. You've got to not worry about that. You need to be relatively good under pressure. It's not like it's like that all the time, but every now and again something will throw you off course for the day. Communication, I think, is important. I think you need to be able to get involved and communicate well. Not be afraid to ask questions. One of the worst things is not ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking a question. Doesn't mean you're anything other than interested. I used to ask lots of questions because I used to like what other people did rather than what I did where I was sitting. So I found out more about fund management just by being nosy. Not to an annoying degree, but well, I don't think so. It's just about showing some enthusiasm, attention to detail in operations is important. Going the extra mile, it's quite basic, but hanging around and making sure everything's done and being part of that team, or that's important as well if you're in a team.
Tell us a bit more about Upside Tech then, and how that's come about over through your guys' years of experience, and how perhaps some of the people on the call could be interested in it.
Yeah, sure. So it's something that we started working on in real earnest last year, but it actually had its sort of groundings in some of the work we did at Avaldi at the previous hedge fund. So throughout that time, we were always looking at different ways to monitor the portfolio managers' experience, how they traded, how accurate they were, things we could look at to try and help them, that kind of thing. So within that, we had various tools that we did that through. Fairly basic, some of them, but they evolved over time. And towards the end of 2017-18, we looked at it in a bit more detail. Anyway, we came back to it last year. Some change in regulations made it more feasible to do some of the things we wanted. So basically, we're trying to build an app and a website, and we've got some of it up now already in test that we've got. The idea is you can put in your trade ideas. Anyone can do it, so anyone on this call more than welcome to sign up when we go live. And if you want to sign up on our website now, you can be on our database, so you feel free to do that later. I'm sure Naomi can send you the web link. But basically, you'll be able to put in your ideas. So if you think you've got a good trade idea, so I want to buy Vodafone, you think Vodafone is, say it's £1 today, you think it's going to be £1.50 in 6 months. You can put that on the system, you can say why, you can put your metrics in, you can build balance sheets, you can build lots of things on there to give you the background as to why you think it's going to go that way. If that's successful, the idea is you'll get sort of marked as to your idea in terms of how accurate it was, your timing, how close you were to the price at the time you said it would go. Lots of different metrics go into marking it, and that will become part of your upside ranking. The more ideas you put in, the better they perform, the higher your ranking. People can then buy your ideas, and obviously if someone buys your idea, then you would receive money, and you can sell ideas and hopefully someone buys them. You get ranked on there. We go up through different levels. The top level would be the equivalent to a portfolio manager in a hedge fund, and from Upside, hedge funds will be able to buy portfolios from those top ranked participants in Upside, and be able to buy them that way. So it's an ecosystem for ideas. We're going to be it will help people hone in their investment skills. We're working on that really hard at the moment, and hopefully have something live at the start of next year, hopefully later this year maybe.
That's cool. That's really good. So yeah, so anyone can do it, and it's a way of practicing, but also a way of getting noticed and possibly getting ahead.
Yeah, and getting feedback as well. Get feedback as well.
So you really could start your career today. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So anyone that sign up and have a look.
Cool. So what kind of and so Higher Park. So what kind of things do Higher Park invest in? Do you have any areas particularly?
Yeah. So we're not live today. We'll be live later in the year, hopefully, on the next fund. But we're quite straightforward. So equities, so global equities, any one that you can probably think of, quite a wide range across the world. Options on those equities. So it's a derivative that enables you to add a bit more exposure with a bit more gearing.
You might have to explain that in more layman's terms. Can you go back and explain it in a bit more layman's terms?
Yeah, sure. So you can buy options that would give you the right to buy or sell an equity at a certain point. So within that, there's some leverage. So it's a way of spending 10p instead of a pound, but getting 10 times the exposure in short terms. So we do that. We do futures, which are instruments that you buy as a price today, and then when they settle in a given period, you receive the difference or pay the difference if it goes wrong. Foreign exchange, the odd unlisted instrument, not very much. Things that aren't quoted on markets you might look at, but very, very rarely. Yeah, so bonds, the occasional bond for cash management. So as you probably know, cash at the moment is probably attracting negative yield. So if you hold £100 in our bank account, we'll get deducted some money for the pleasure of holding it, which sounds wrong. So maybe to avoid that, you could invest that in a bond, treasury bond, or something near cash. Again, that would be an alternative to that. But yeah, quite vanilla compared to a lot of people do credit stuff and fixed interest, fixed income. We don't tend to do that. Quite vanilla as it goes.
Okay. And what's been, do you think, a real career high for you?
A real high?
Career high. So what, is there any aspects you think, oh, you know, that was a really good, you know, time?
Yeah, it's
proud.
I was proud, yeah. Obviously, what I'm doing now is what I've always wanted to be doing. So at the minute, I am on that high, I think. But in terms of events, I was thinking about it, and it sounded a bit weird, but you get promotions along the way, but without trying to put people's ambitions down, by the time you get a promotion, you probably have been working that hard at that role anyway. So it doesn't come as a surprise. It's more sometimes a bit begrudging that it's taken so long. So it wasn't promotions for me that was the high. I think there was one. I get a letter, I guess I got from one of my bosses when I was at Fidelity, and it was a pay rise and it was a change in title, but it was unexpected, and it was because he believed in me and he'd batted for me in the meetings to get me that, and he wanted me in the team, and he recognised what I'd done, and it was one of the few times where it's sort of been a surprise. It's like, wow, someone actually did that for me, and that was, I still talk to him. Importance of network again. I still talk to him. He's got a really good position somewhere else, so we're still in touch. But it was that moment is like, oh wow, someone actually, that's cool. Yeah, in terms of what I want to be doing, where I want to be doing it, is right now. This is like the job I've sort of always wanted to think I'd get into. So doing my best to keep it going.
So while people are in lockdown at the moment, what do you think they could be doing to researching your industry, researching how they could get involved? If they could use Upside to practice, or any other ways that they could be doing an investment, or watching the markets. What could they do?
Well, you can see it behind me. You know, I've had the markets on behind me, or Sky News, for the last 3 months. I would just keep close to the market, understand the market. Financial Times is important. Read the Financial Times, or at least look at the headlines, and then Google through if you don't want to pay for it all. It's not the cheapest paper. City AM News. Just keep current on what's going on in the markets, and you'll see hedge funds talked about, and then you can investigate those hedge funds. There's so many hedge funds. There's so many around. And then you'll start hearing some names, and you start reading. And like I said at the beginning, the press do make some of them out to be like the Wild West, but it really isn't. It's a lot more regulated than that. But yeah, stay current, keep an eye on listen out for stocks, keep an eye on companies that you like, learn a bit more about those companies, and just you could go on, and that's part of why I like what we do. You're always learning. There's always something. Learn something every day. I'm on a webinar tomorrow, learn about something to do with balance sheets. Always take the time to learn things.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? I just put that in the chat. But are there any questions anyone could put. Oh, here we go. Sam Marchbank. I see lots of adverts on various apps I use in which they advertise apps in which you trade and make money in stocks through investing in various opportunities. Would you say this is a valuable experience into the industry, i.e. trading 212? Could you talk about this in an interview, especially given the circumstances in lockdown?
There's me talking personally, not as anyone else. So yeah, so trading 212 I use. So yeah, I'm familiar with trading 212. I see a lot of, or I hear about and see quite a lot of what people sell signals nowadays, which I find quite scary. So you'd be on Instagram and someone who might consider themselves to be a top trader will sell you ideas. That's not a good area to get into, I don't think. I think you should be probably making your own ideas up and doing your own investment. I don't know what sort of apps, Sam, you're talking about, but I know there's people that try and sell their ideas, and you have to be very careful with anything that, buying someone else's ideas is not always a good thing, I don't think, in terms of some of the way these accounts are set up. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are good traders, but they probably wouldn't tend to sell their ideas. There's lots of good people you can follow out there that are good, and just check them out. Just be careful what you're looking at. But yeah, I wouldn't. If you've gone to an interview and you've done some trades on Trading 212 and you can talk about them and why you did them and how it worked and why you got into it in the first place, then yeah, I'd be interested to hear that. I asked people when they've come to interviews about what level is the FTSE at the minute, and FTSE 100, and what price is this, and just to see if they're actually interested in the market. So if you can demonstrate some experience that you've had trading, all the better to say, I've done something before. Same as me when I did my NatWest thing. That once I could tell someone about it, people then give you a bit more credit as to understanding a bit more about the industry. So yeah, just be careful on people selling ideas. Not so much, I know upside selling ideas, that's different. But some people have multiple accounts where they sell one idea to go up and one down, and obviously one of those works and one doesn't. So just be careful.
Okay, so Zacchaeus says, is it a good idea to try and graduate straight into smaller boutique banks or smaller boutique hedge funds, or would it be better to build a reputation in a larger place like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs before you get into hedge funds?
Yeah, I guess both would work. People do both of those. I think if you get into a larger bank, you'll probably have more opportunity to see more things across different areas. So if you get into a large bank like Goldman's or JPM, they're so huge that whatever area you get into, and I think as on a graduate, you probably rotate through different departments anyway. So I think you'd have lots of opportunity at a bigger bank to see lots of different things. A boutique hedge fund, you'll be probably going into one role, and you'll probably be quite tight to that role because that's what they've made the space for you to come into. But boutique by nature is going to be less people, less opportunity. Smaller banks will be like Goldman's or JPM, but it's less of it, I guess. But yeah, either of those. But I think if you want, you might, what you think you might want to do in a bank versus what you see when you get into it. Having a larger bank to choose from gives you more opportunity, I'd say. Probably more competition as well, especially for Goldman's one. But
yeah, it's
good luck if you're going that direction. Be good once you're in. It'd be good.
Oh, Claudine, what are the best things to invest in, Matt? What are the best things?
Can't answer that. Not that time. Yourself. Invest in yourself. Yeah, I couldn't answer that. I could, but I'd be in trouble.
Oh dear. So are there ways into larger banks other than the highly competitive junior analyst roles? Ooh.
Well, they're often advertising. Well, junior analyst role could be on any desk. There's so many desks. I think there's a lot of different sort of graduate training programs. I know Morgan Stanley do quite a good one. I've spoken to them. Merrill Lynch, I think, do, but Morgan Stanley do as well. They should be on your list. and they rotate people around various teams. But I would just look generally on their websites, and if it's not a graduate program, there's often roles coming up. Yeah, I don't know about other ways into that.
Investment 2020 is a good site, I think, to be looking at getting in at graduate level to roles, and they give a lot of advice in how to get into analyst and investment careers. So we've looked a lot at them, and I think the Investment 2020 is a good way to get in. And of course, any work experience, obviously, the Talent app can offer to our students is useful, because you've got things on your CV, and then you can build networks as well via that, which is useful. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know, Matt, but I would say that getting into any bank, like you did, it doesn't have to be in a junior analyst level. It could be a role. It could be at a different role, and then you can move. Once you're in, it's much easier then to move in between. Yeah. And you might find that you don't want to be an analyst, that's something else.
That's the same for most big companies. Once you're in and you're doing a good job, and you want to look around, there's always lots of opportunities, because they want to keep people often in-house rather than hire outside. So you get a lot of it. Once you're in, there's more opportunities once you're in, definitely.
Evan says, what would be better for me, to aim to study at a university or try to get into a graduate program after sixth form?
That's interesting. I wouldn't guide you either way on that. What I would say is that, I've some fund managers I work with, their degrees have been in history, politics. History comes up quite a bit, politics, physics, but there's, I wouldn't say there's one better than the other. Well, there probably is, like economics or something from Oxford and Cambridge, but I don't think there's one's better than the other. A lot of our PMs that I've met have got all different things. A lot of them are traditional, like maths and economics and physics, that kind of thing, but not particular, I don't think. Obviously, something that's slightly more tailored to what you want to do is probably useful, but I've seen a mixture of different ones.
But there's also degree apprenticeships in all the big firms now. Everybody is doing, a lot of people are doing degree apprenticeships as well, which is a good way in, or apprenticeship programs. I think it does depend very much on the individual. And I don't know, Matt, but I imagine that you would look equally at somebody if they, at them as a person, whether or not they've got a degree or not a degree, depending on the amount of experience they have.
Personally, yeah, definitely, yeah. I wouldn't say that's the wrong one.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't got one, so.
Is there a big difference between doing accounting finance degree or economics finance in terms of job opportunities in hedge funds?
Not from my perspective. I think accounting roles people that do accounting tend to end up doing accounting on some of the so like there's another part of the business called fund administration, and they have accounting. They take a lot of accountants into that, and that their job is to value funds on a daily basis and some analysis around that. So a lot of people that go down the accounting route tend to go down to fund administration, which is an interesting job as well. That's part of what serves hedge funds. So every hedge fund has a valuation on their fund each day normally, and that's outsourced typically to a fund administrator, and they employ accountants. So that would be a route down that way. Economics and finance, so yeah, that lends itself to hedge funds. Accounting and finance would as well. There's lots of accounting in hedge funds, but there's the accounting.
Is having a greater understanding of mathematical economics more favourable than having a better understanding about economic theory? I think that pays to the prior question as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's routes for all of those. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's strategists and people at strategy level. People look at a more closer level. Yeah, all of these things are ways, to add value to anyone, definitely.
Yeah, we were speaking, there's a company called Gain, Girls Are Investors, who did a talk with us a few weeks ago, and both the women that gave the talk had come through university, and as you said, one had done a history degree and one had done a politics degree, and they were both on the kind of more research side. So people with economics and politics and history tended to go along the research side of funds. Then of course on the other side you've got the much more mathematical brains that either, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but are either doing the accountancy and valuing the funds, etc., or doing the kind of that side of things. And then there's so many different areas you can go into, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could talk a bit. Would you be able to talk a bit more about that within, say, the fund, the different areas of the different kind of tranches of people?
Yeah. So within the previous firm, when we were at our peak, there was probably, I'm just going around the room. So we'd have 2 traders. We had marketing. So written work comes in quite handy there as well. You'd have portfolio managers with analysts. So people that would support the portfolio managers. Legal. So a lot of writing on that one. So if you're into reading and history, that tends to go down there legal wise. Compliance. Again, that's probably a lot of research and reading as well. Risk team, so they're very mathematically sort of studying the risk of the fund, lots of mathematics behind that. Technology team, operations team, sort of PA support team. But yeah, so there's so many roles there that so many skills can come into it, and everyone's very different, and everyone's come from different backgrounds. Some have worked for big banks before. You talked about, someone mentioned Goldman's earlier. We have people that have worked at Goldman's and then come through to work with us. On the risk side, probably one of those is graduate, one of those has worked at one of those banks that was mentioned earlier as well. So yeah, it's all about finding your route. You find your way in, and then finding what works for you as you go through, and what you enjoy really. You're going to be doing it every day for a long time, so you need to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, obviously there's a lot of law in there, and you could be within the hedge fund and on the compliance side or in the legal team so in-house, but also a lot of the corporate lawyers you're dealing with on a very regular basis, aren't you? I imagine, with your funds. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely on the legal side. Yeah, definitely on the legal side. Any new fund that we launch, any new account, anything, there's so much legal work involved, and you can either do that in-house or you can do it outsource. Outsource is expensive as any lawyer is. They're charged by the hour, so that soon builds up. On the compliance side, there's so much compliance in the industry. There's so many new rules come out. How do those rules apply? How do we apply them to us? There's a lot of reading as well, legal type work as well. There's everything in there really.
Does anyone else have any more questions to ask Matt? It's interesting you said that you put your CV on blue paper. I don't know whether that was premeditated, because it seems that every single discussion that we've had, be it with highly creative industries, so we're talking, advertising or magazine journalism, to more analytical industries such as yourself, it's always been how to make yourself stand out. And so you have talked a bit about that. I mean, obviously for a CV for you, you don't want to have loads of pictures and loads of, it doesn't have to literally be sparkling to get a notice. But what kind of things do stand out on the page, do you think, or would make somebody stand out?
We've had some recently. It probably wouldn't apply to these guys on here, but on the tech side, where they've had sort of like graphs of their skills, so it's quite nicely displayed. They're graphical designers, so it came with that territory really. But their CV just stood out because the different languages that they could do, or different programming skills. they would do like a little ranking of each one in a table. So immediately you're like, oh, that's, you know, that stands out. I think on the operation, well, on the hedge fund side, I guess, and that won't be a problem at this stage. But you know, don't make them too long. Don't space things out for the sake of it. Obviously, it's got to fill a page in a bit, but you know, sometimes they come through 3-4 pages and it's just too long, and it doesn't really help. Yeah, just be concise and clear. You know, space it out. Just make it look nice. You know, some come all cramped up, and sometimes that's the fault of, you know, the printer doesn't quite get your format or something like that. So just careful what format you send it in, and what, you know, don't go for some flashy font that is in all like italics or something that you can't sort of see too well, or it's too small or something like that. Yeah, there's some good tools on the internet you can use to give you an idea, but just make it clear. You know, some people go a bit overboard on their likes and things, and like reading, cooking, walking, dogs and things. It's interesting, but there won't. There's not too much on that really. Some people do a whole section on that. I wouldn't do too much on that. Try and sell some skills, or, you know, like one of the questions earlier, you know, maybe a covering letter. Maybe that's the best that you can put that on. Something that sells yourself. You know, the question earlier about trading and 212, that kind of thing. You know, if you say you've got an interest in what you do, then put it on there. It's hard to read that on a CV. It doesn't come across. So if you have an interest or some covering letter, then, you know, that's always worth doing. Just, it gives you that extra thing. I always find that just firing a CV in, you need something to make someone read that CV. So yeah, mine was blue, but I think if you could put a covering letter with it, or a covering email that helps sell you, yeah, because there's so much competition, and I imagine, yeah, in the current climate, it's going to be a lot more competition. But if you get something to get in front of someone, you know, that direct approach, or, you know, hi, this is me, I'm this, and I've done this, and I'm interested in this. Please have a look at my CV. I think that's a gooder way to do it than paying someone to do your professional CV. I think you need something that someone will pick it up off their desk. And I always like things. It's interesting, you know, people make an effort, and then you make an effort. It rubs off. You know, I would, you know, someone sends us a cold email, always make sure we get back to it, even if we haven't got anything, because, you know, they've made an effort. You know, you should get rewarded for that, even if it's not an interview. So, you know, might be a thanks, we keep you on record, but you know, one of those will work, won't it? One of them will happen.
And would you, Christian, because obviously every industry is different, and as the Talent App, we always try to support people in feeling comfortable in the different industries. If somebody was coming to an interview with you, would you be expecting them to wear a suit and tie?
I used to, but I don't anymore. It's funny that we don't. So yeah, if you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago, and where we were doing and what we were doing, then if they didn't turn up in a suit and a tie, then it would be a major shock. Nowadays, we wear suit and ties now, at the moment anyway. And the people we've been interviewing on the technology side, some of them have, and some of them just haven't. And it seems to be anything seems to be go really.
But how would that? But for first impressions, though, you know, there's people still have to feel confident in their first impression.
Yeah, no, I think you should. I think you should at least wear. You know, if you don't want to wear a tie, at least wear a shirt, and, well, for a guy, at least, you know, a shirt and suit. You know, I would think so, and ladies as well. You know, dress smart. It's like office attire, really. I think. You don't have to go too overboard. Not like going to a nightclub, but, you know, you don't have to like dress up really, you know, too smart. You don't have to put your best outfits on, and, you know, your best shirts, but at least look smart. You know, you can get a decent shirt from Charles Tyrwhitt or somewhere like that looks smart, that doesn't cost a fortune, that someone will think, oh, okay, look, it looks all right. Because you look around the office and everyone's dressed smart and you've just come in a t-shirt and jeans, then you're probably struggling, because when you go for an interview, everyone in the office is going to look at you anyway, and the first thing they see is, you know, not quite the best effort as you could do. It's difficult though, because, you know, different parts of the industry are comfortable with different things, but I think we've become less judgmental on that as we probably used to be. But I think if you're going for a first job or you want to make an impression, is a good thing to do. I think if I went to do an interview, I would. If I go to meetings at banks, I still tend to put a suit and a shirt on. I think it's best to look smart and look comfortable, not look like you've dressed up and you're uncomfortable. You need to be comfortable in it.
I think we have one more question, but I don't think I think it's probably an easy answer. Does being dyslexic reduce my employability?
No,
of course not. It's, you know,
nope.
Does anybody even need to know? As in, initially, it's not. It's who you are and what you do in yourself, and it should. And I don't think that's anything. I mean, this is across the board. It shouldn't frame you. It shouldn't be who you are. It's just something that you have to work more hard sometimes to overcome.
Yeah, I know someone that's doing a role in a operations team, dyslexic as well, and they do a fine job. He works with a friend of mine, and he's one of the best guys he's got. So yeah, no.
You often work harder to overcompensate. So no. Any more questions to Matt this evening? I don't think so. Anybody? Anyone? Well, no, but it's been really fascinating to get more of an insight, and also to get more of an insight in the different roles within the team and operations as well, because everyone probably thinks about analysts, etc. But as we know, in industry, there are so many different roles, and it takes a lot of different types of people and different skill sets to make any business work. And I think that I don't know. I think that if you've got an interest in finance or and that kind of career, but you're also studying law or studying accountancy or history, there's still places for you there, and it's a really fascinating career, I'm sure, to go into. Do you have any last remarks to make, Matt?
No, I was just to say, if anyone thinks of a question, then feel free. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to follow me on there, then get in touch if you need to. If you wake up in the middle of the night with a burning question, then I'm happy to take that. On Upside Technology, we're on Instagram. If you're on that, if you could give us a follow on that and keep an eye on what we're up to, that'd be interesting as well. Just to get your feedback on that as we go along. So it's Upside Technology. It's got a green upside symbol. If you could give that a follow on Instagram, that'd be cool. But yeah, no, thanks for listening.
Thank
great.
You. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for the questions.
It's been really helpful. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining in.
Sorry. Yeah.
Cheers.
Oh, hold on.
And everybody who's on there, if you could keep telling your friends and your fellow students about all our different Zoominars. There are different Zoominars every week. It is really helpful to spread the word, so we can network and get all these different career insights out there to as many people as possible. So do keep following us and spread the word. And thank you again, Matt, for your time. And I'm gonna
all right, thanks to everyone.
Cheers. Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.